Hello everyone and welcome to the Bonus Points podcast. I'm your host Garrett, host Joe Garrett, as always, being joined by Guy, as well as a new friend of the show, Craig Herman.
Hi.
Hello Craig, welcome. So I guess Ollie, do you want to introduce who Craig is, seeing as he's one of your mates?
Yes, so me and Craig, we used to play amateur journalist together. For a website, and Sonic. So this week Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Sonic is like within our histories together quite a lot. So we went to a gaming event, and we got to play Sonic Mania. And I've got a lovely picture that I'm going to give you to put in the video version of us at this event. And me and Craig also went to the Sonic movie premiere together. He was
I forgot about that.
You forgot? It's my date to that. And also, Craig was like just the biggest Sonic. I don't want to say maniac, but like it's not far off. You actually have a Sonic 3 and Knuckles WhatsApp picture, don't you?
I do, and I'm sat here grinning from ear to ear in front of the Green Hill Zone with a Sonic t-shirt on, a Sonic 2 badge. Yeah.
And then the way I know Craig is, one, I listened and consumed the previous life content that you did, so I knew Craig through that. But then the only time I've met Craig in real life was at a Halloween party around Ollie's, where you were dressed as Sonic. So I've only ever seen you dressed as Sonic or in Sonic attire. So like you're 50-50 like Sonic
like this.
and Craig.
I did bring it. There we go. Like this. You might recognise me now.
It's you. It's like in Wallace and Gromit, where it's like Feathers McGraw, and he like takes like this like rubber glove off, and it's like, it's you, the penguin.
Yeah, I'm not going to wear this all the way through, but just in case you didn't recognise me, I thought, I was going to ring bells.
Where's the onesie? I wanted to see the Sonic onesie.
That is put away for another time.
Right, also, okay, so oh, sorry, Ollie.
Sorry, I actually stayed at Craig's house only once, and the bed that he put me in had Sonic bed sheets. And I was like, we were both fully adults. Like,
did you like lie in and then it just like launched you out across the room? You're like zoom, and, like
it fired me into some spikes.
Yeah.
I feel like this is turning into a bit of a roast. I do have other interests, but I'm not. I don't have everything Sonic. Not that I've proved any to the contrary so far.
Yeah, I was going to say, yet to be proven.
I was going to say, like, I also think you're the biggest Nintendo fan I know.
Am I?
Yeah, like you buy every first-party Switch game, you play every Mario game, Zelda, like you buy both the Pokemon games every time.
Yeah, you've named Zelda, Mario, and Pokemon all very niche Nintendo franchises.
Yeah.
No, but like I'm just saying, like back in the day. They would have been your rival, wouldn't they?
I didn't really care, actually. I don't think I should have done. I didn't. I didn't. The NES was my first system, my first gaming system, and then I went to Sega. So I was just whoever's cool, whoever's popular. I'll go there.
Glory supporter.
So obviously we don't want to paint the picture that you're a Sonic obsessive, which is probably what we've done. But like obviously you have a huge love for Sonic. So was Sonic like a big part of your childhood growing up then?
Yeah, like massive. I was trying to think. So I said I got a NES first, and so I played Mario before Sonic. But the first Mario game on the NES, I was thinking Mario wasn't the Mario. He didn't look like the Mario looks now. He was just on the box art was just like an enlarged sprite. So for me, Mario was just a man. Whereas I remember first seeing Sonic and thinking, this is a character. This is someone really different. And I think I just hooked onto that as a kid. Got a Master System, got a Mega Drive, and I was just all into the games. And at the time, there was Sonic the Comic in the UK as well, which was based on... It started after Sonic 2, but they serialized Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. So alongside the games, I was sort of getting all this characterization. I had this really clear image in my mind of what the characters were like that just didn't really exist for Mario. So I think that's where it was. It just came at the right time. I was the right age. It just completely got in my head. I was really engrossed by it.
Yeah, cool. What about you, Ollie? What's your Sonic history? I know you've mentioned it a bit to me, but I wouldn't consider you like a Sonic like fan. But like, did you play any of the old Mega Drive ones?
Yeah, so I played 1 to 3 and Knuckles when I was a kid. And then I played Sonic Adventure 1. I mean, I know I definitely played more than you. I played Sonic Adventure 1. Then I think I played both the racing game, the two of the racing games, Racing and Transformed. Then Colors, Generations, Lost World, which was too rubbish for me to finish. And then Mania, which is great. But like, I check them out. I always check them out. I check the reviews out. But I'm not like... Some people just really don't like Sonic, and it's not me. I'm like, oh yeah, if it's good, it's good. So I'll check it out.
Okay, and I guess just to set the scene for me, I've owned, this is the only Sonic game I've ever finished. So I played I have nostalgia for Sonic because even though I didn't have a Mega Drive, like a bunch of my mates did. So like, you know, the music, the sound effects, like it it lights up the happy place in my brain like it does for so many other people. So I do get that. But, you know, not having access to one at home, like I never, you know, completed it back in the day. And then I've not really played anything. I played Sonic Mania. I never finished it. So I'm like, this is the first time I'm like, right, let's really try and understand what is the appeal of these 2D Sonic games. And the first time I kind of forced myself to stick with one. So I'm the big Sonic noob out of the group.
Do you want me to quickly read through the Sonic 3 and Knuckles wiki thing?
Yeah.
Let's introduce it properly. So I've had to smash 2 paragraphs together, so it might sound a bit weird. Just bear with me. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is a 1994 platform game developed and published by Sega for the Genesis. Like previous Sonic games, players traverse side-scrolling levels while collecting rings and defeating enemies. They control Sonic and Tails, who attempt to retrieve the Chaos Emeralds and stop the evil Dr. Robotnik from relaunching his space station, the Death Egg, after it crash lands on a mysterious floating island. Sonic 3 was developed simultaneously with Sonic and Knuckles, and they were planned as a single game until the time constraints and cartridge costs forced the developers to split it. The Sonic 3 cartridge can be attached to an adapter on the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge, creating one combined game, Sonic 3 and Knuckles. There you go.
Okay, cool. So why this one, Craig? Seeing as you've played, you know, probably the majority of Sonic games, and you could only pick one. I feel like the iconic one, I feel like people go to Sonic 2. So like, why in particular this one?
So I think for this, playing the 2 games together, in hindsight, because I didn't have the 2 games when I was a kid. I had Sonic and Knuckles, but not Sonic 3. So I never really fully appreciated at the time that it was one game split in 2. But playing them back now, I think they're probably the best example of what Sega was trying to do with Sonic. And actually, I don't want to compare it to Mario all the time, but it was Sega versus Nintendo. How much more they were trying to create a story that followed across consecutive games. And this really, I suppose, was the end of the story until Mania. I won't even really acknowledge Sonic 4, but this was like the end of the story. And for a long time, this was Sonic. Because then you were going to Sonic Adventure and it starts to change completely who Sonic is and what the lore is and what the games are about. So I think this is the best representation of the 2D Sonic games from that era.
So do you reckon this is the best of the original 3?
I think together they are. I completely get the fondness for Sonic 2, but I think there are elements of Sonic 3 that take that formula and push it even further. And even, you know, the start of Sonic 3 and Knuckles is this the end of Sonic 2. So you're starting with what you'd achieved on Sonic 2 and you're taking, okay, now we're going to use that as a starting point for a brand new game and go on from there. So yeah, I think there is a solid case for it to be the best one.
I guess like Sonic 2 probably stands out more because that was the first one that I think really got the formula right. And so it's in everyone's memory. It's like, wow, that they remember their first moment playing it. Whereas, you know, Sonic 3 is probably better, but it doesn't wow you as much because they'd already played one that was already, you know, so good at doing what it was doing that maybe like it's remembered a little less fondly just because it didn't break as much ground. No pun intended as Sonic 2.
And I think and splitting them, obviously at the time, Sega didn't come out and say, this is one game that we split into 2 and we're going to charge you for it twice. So you played Sonic 3, and I did play it, I just didn't own it, and you're like, this is good, but it's quite short. And you play Sonic and Knuckles, you're like, this is good, but it's quite short. Whereas Sonic 2 feels bigger as a single game, whereas I think individually Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles don't feel quite as big, and I think that probably individually they wouldn't wow me in the same way, but together I think they do.
Yeah, you're almost cheating by having two games on the list because you're physically like linking them together. You want to talk just for like those that can't really imagine it? Can you kind of explain specifically about like the way that they would connect? So it's like obviously that it's cartridges, just for anyone who hasn't really been thinking about that, like a plastic cartridge. So you put Sonic Hedgehog 3 in, then you'll put the Knuckles into it, and then are you loading up? Is that just like one menu there combined, like the content?
So Sonic and Knuckles when it was released imagine the cartridge. It was a little bit bigger and it had a sort of a bulky top, and the top flipped open, and you plugged Sonic 3 into it, and then you plugged the whole thing into the Mega Drive, and then it just starts as one game. It starts as Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So you start from the start. So it's not like you finish Sonic 3 and then Sonic and Knuckles comes out and you plug it in, you go, I can just pick up where I started off. You have to play the whole thing through again. So yeah, I think it's the only game that looked like that.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Yeah. Was that like a new technology like Sega invented, and then this was their utilization of it, or was it just we have a problem we need to fix? Let's create this mad way that they link up.
Well, when I was a kid, I used to have my grandparents used to go to America a lot, and they brought me over some American Sega games, and it had the same Sonic and Knuckles flip lid thing to allow me to play American games.
Okay.
So I guess maybe they existed for something else. Maybe also those Game Shark cheats. Remember those?
Yeah.
Like the Game Shark games? I guess one of those is probably the same.
Yeah, maybe it's kind of
lid.
tech that they just had. Maybe it's just, literally the slot that's on the Mega Drive or Genesis, if you're American, like they could just put that on the top of it. Maybe it wasn't like that big of like an R&D investment to add that on.
Well, they had games, I think there were a few games that they published with controller slots in, because they wanted, because the Mega Drive had two controller slots, and they had some games that had for 4 players. Like I think it was some tennis games that had cartridge slots in as well. But again, they just rarely ever used it. And some of the games were just bigger. They were like double-sized cartridges for no real reason whatsoever. So I think Sega at the time were experimenting with loads of tech, because they were obviously trying to keep the Mega Drive going because it was gaining ground on Nintendo in the UK and Europe, whereas Japan were like, we're ready for the next generation, we're ready to move on, and they were just trying to prolong the technology as much as possible. So I think they were just trying loads of wacky stuff to try and keep developing the games and things you could do with them.
Well, there was a Sega CD as well, wasn't there? It went on the bottom of the console. And then wasn't there like the 32X or something like went on the top, or was that a different unit, or like so you could have a tower?
No. Yeah, it was. So you had the Mega Drive, then you had the Mega Drive 2. They sort of upgraded it, and you had the Mega CD that was an add-on, and then the 32X slotted in the top.
Yeah,
but it needed an additional power supply, and at the time, now you just be like, okay, I'll just stick a power slot in and stick it in an extension cord. But you didn't have things like that in the 90s. You're like,
so
where
ridiculous.
Am I going to plug all this in? And where am I going to put all these wires? And because at the time we didn't really have second TVs either. So you're going to parents, oh, by the way, can I unplug the aerial from the TV and then plug this behemoth of a thing with 3 plugs and 10 wires into the TV? And then you've got to tune it in because it doesn't have it doesn't have its own channel. And I can see why people didn't really go for that as a mainstream gaming console.
But there's only one modern example I can think of that comes anywhere close to that. And I don't know how much either of you did it, but setting up the original PlayStation VR was the only time it felt close to that, with the amount of cables where you got to power this and a breakout box, and like the instruction manual for how in depth it had to be just to set that thing up was like, I think that's the only modern example that's come close to how ridiculous and like hodgepodge like of a way around it is.
So which version did you play most recently then, Craig?
So I played it through on Sonic Origins that was released last year.
Yeah, and then I think me and Joe both played Sonic Air. Did you play Air, Joe?
I played what you sent me.
Yeah, Sonic Air, the modern mod. So it's basically the same game, but it's like in widescreen.
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And it has the old music. So.
And just to make that clear, that's what the footage on screen is. Like, there may be some minor inconsistencies between that and like playing original hardware. Like, I didn't encounter any bugs or graphical bugs. There was no input delay, so I think I had a good experience. But I guess that is for when we come to ranking it. I guess I'm technically ranking that version of it, but everything seemed to run great as far as I could tell.
One thing I just want to say straight off the bat is I think this game is really hard.
Okay.
Like, really difficult. I had to, in Sonic Air, you could turn on unlimited lives, and I had to do that.
Oh, I wish I knew you could do that. I'd have loved to. I didn't, but I wish I knew you could do that.
You could turn on unlimited time and unlimited lives, and I did both.
So Ollie and I have a tradition where when we play through these games, when we finish them, we always send a screenshot of the credits and just like give a little GG, well done, like you beat it. You never sent me a credit screen, Ollie.
No, I the first boss of Death Egg Zone I never managed to beat. I think I died about 25 times and I was like, I can't do it. So I watched the ending on YouTube. I threw in the towel. I was like, I've had enough. It's that one that's like, it's got like balls flying around it. And it was just like, and then two platforms fly around it as well, like this. And I couldn't, I literally couldn't be it. I don't know what I was doing wrong.
And there are more bosses after that, so possibly you if you struggle with that, you might have struggled to go on.
But Joe sent me his completion picture just before we started, so I was going to say it was the first time ever neither of us finished it, but it sounds like obviously you managed it.
Well, I had a bit of a journey. So I didn't really understand the whole Sonic the Hedgehog 3 plus Knuckles thing. Like, so I had looked up how like long Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is, and I was trying to plan it. So I always try to plan so I finish it quite soon to the podcast, so it's fresh in my head. So I was playing a couple of hours ago before recording this. I was playing that, and I beat that. And then I realized that, like, and I went to the level select, and then there was loads more levels. And I realized I hadn't played through any of the Knuckles levels yet. So I like blasted through all of those, and I just managed to beat it. But I tell you what, I'm so glad I did, because I know it's kind of like slicing one game in half. So maybe it's just like my perception. But like, I felt like those later levels were way more interesting. The boss quality, there was like a huge jump, and like. If I'd just done like the first Sonic and Hedgehog 3 and was going to do this podcast, I'd be way more negative. But I literally just beat like the Mecha Sonic boss, which was like an amazing boss, and then the cutscene at the end, and then the credits, and then I've basically just come and press record. So I'm like way more hyped about Sonic. Like,
good.
Do you find that, Craig? Do you see like a quality jump between the two?
Yeah, I think there's like it doesn't. I know it was two games split, one game split into two, but it doesn't feel like that. I think it's quite well paced playing it all together, because what you'd think is that there would be a sort of difficulty spike for the first 6 stages, and then it's going to go back and spike again because it's two different games. But I think I've played it through a couple of times now, and I think it's paced really well, and I think the bosses get better and better the more you go through the game. And there were times when I was playing it through the later stages, and I was thinking, these are almost a bit Nintendo-ish in the way they're thinking about the way you defeat them, as opposed to just jumping and hitting it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one like there's like the, my notes, I've called it the stop hitting yourself boss, where there's like the button on the top, and you stand on it, and then like it hits itself, and then there's the one after that, it's like a sand golem, and you kind of got to lure it to the edge and then break apart, because otherwise it keeps healing. Like, those bosses were, really cool, and they're not mechanically difficult, but you got to like solve the puzzle quick, because the levels are so long and you have limited lives. Like, the sense of failure is really strong. Like, I mean, my point of comparison is always Dark Souls, but it's the same thing where you're like, I don't want to die to this boss because I'm going to lose all of this progress. Like, I felt that in this game, and obviously if you lose, it sucks. But if you do manage to beat it like first time, like, it feels great.
Yeah, I got stuck on Carnival Night Zone boss, both of them. The one with the blocks on the floor, and that like it bounces the like drill off the blocks.
Oh, like the alleyway kind of style one.
Yeah, I died on that one quite a few times, and then I would die on the next level because I'd run out of time during the boss fight, because you could only hit him during a certain thing. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like I kept running out of time waiting for that. So, like, to be fair, I absolutely smashed through the game except for Carnival Night Zone. Sandopolis zone, which is just hell on earth. And then obviously I got stuck at the end. But I mean, considering there's 14 worlds, and I did, 11 of them pretty easily.
I like Sandopolis. That one had so many creative ideas.
No, it just felt just too long.
Yeah, I mean, all the levels are too long, I think.
Yeah.
To be fair. Should we haven't really... Sorry, Craig.
I think what I think I appreciate much more now is that the levels are big, but then because a lot of them are speed, I know it becomes less about speed and more about trying to kill you by the end. But because they are so much about speed, the levels, you sort of appreciate how much has gone into those levels that it just zips by, and the amount of content that the level designers must have designed for it not even to be seen, because there's multiple levels to go through. You can sort of go top, middle, or bottom through most levels, and they are big, but equally, I think for most of them, you can whiz by and not see sort of 2/3 of what's actually in them.
Yeah, I think an important thing to remember is when they were released at a time where most people would get way less games and have access to like way fewer games. So people would replay, kids would replay them again and again and again. And so, I'm reviewing it from a stand who was playing through once. I'm like, oh, it's a bit long, and like, oh, I couldn't go fast because, it was a bit clunky, whatever. But I think it's designed in a way where you're going to end up also almost like memorizing these levels. So the fact they are so long and so deep, there's kind of like more there for you to go with. And I think probably replaying the levels, trying to get all the Chaos Emeralds is probably quite satisfying. Or probably was quite satisfying for you as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, at the time, it was although the bonus stages are fairly achievable, particularly in Sonic 3, I think we just used the level select and the cheat codes, because once you knew Super Sonic was there, all you wanted to do was play it like it's really fast already. I want to go even faster and just run through everything. So I was thinking, I'm not sure that I ever collected all the emeralds properly originally back when I played it in the 90s, because I probably just put a cheat code in to play it that way.
Yeah. I got 2 this time, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get all of them, and then I just didn't get a single one after that.
Yeah, I
Those
missed
bonus stages are crazy, right? Like the round one where you like are running along and collecting the blue balls.
Oh, the one where it changed perspective and it's like behind you.
Yeah, and like I don't know, like they were kind of disorientating. Even though I was like in my head, I was like, I'm mapping this out and I can figure out and remember where things are. I don't know if it is actually like on a round ball, or if it's even mappable, or like is it just generated as you go, or what? Like I couldn't figure out how it even works.
So there's as you go through them, I think the ones in Sonic 3 are fairly straightforward, but the ones in Sonic and Knuckles, because you can collect all the emeralds in the Sonic 3 part, and then when you get to the Sonic and Knuckles part, so Mushroom Hill onwards, you lose them, and then you collect them again as Super Emeralds, and those blue sphere stages are so much harder. They, rather than just sort of run around and collect in squares, it makes you follow a specific path all the way around the globe, and you do see, if you just run in one direction, you see the same patterns going round. So it is all mappable on a globe.
Oh wow, I wonder how they did that. I mean, I do prefer the Sonic 2 half pipe. That's my favourite one, I think.
Oh, I detest that.
Oh really?
Well,
it was
it's
cool.
not the it's not the stage itself. It's the fact that because when Sonic 2 came out, it's obviously had Tails, so you're always going to play it with Tails. And then because there's the lag when he jumps, I don't know how anyone ever completed them, because Sonic jumps and then Tails jumps about half a second later, and I think it's such a bad design. Whereas at least on these, the character can't move off track.
Yeah, that's true. They're fixed, aren't they?
What do you guys think of Knuckles as just as a character, like gameplay wise and just like style? Like, do you think Knuckles is cool?
I mean, I at the time, so the whole thing was like Sonic versus Knuckles, and I remember when it came out, I think Knuckles was, everyone wants to play as Knuckles. You wouldn't even turn Sonic and Knuckles on and click Sonic. You'd just go straight for Knuckles. And it was like, he can glide and he can climb. And yeah, because they were movements that characters in video games didn't really do. it was only in Sonic 3 that you could control Tails flying. So then to have this character who could glide and climb walls, he was really, really cool. But the game's actually much harder playing as him in places because he doesn't jump as high. And some of the bosses you can't even reach to hit.
Okay.
But yeah, he was like so cool. He was at the time and still is.
What about you, Ollie?
He's all right. I don't really know how I feel about Sonic's mates, to be honest. I mean, Bryony loves them. The last Fine Stress party she went to, she dressed as Knuckles. So it's a weird little insight into her life. She loves Knuckles. But I mean, he's okay. I think Sonic's friends generally are quite lame. Like, there's quite a big collection of them now at this point. I think they add one in every game. And because he's had so many games, he's now got like 30 little mates.
What do you think about some of the other ones? Like, was it like Amy was one? Is that right, Craig?
Amy.
Yeah,
she's pretty quite old now.
I sort of think the classic ones. So Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy. I sort of think I have a tolerance for them, but that is possibly just because they were at the time when I was growing up. But I felt like they all had a purpose. I felt like Knuckles has a purpose. Knuckles is the antagonist, and Tails was sort of the follower, and Amy's like sort of the love interest that's not a love interest. So I sort of felt like they all had a role, but then as you move on and you get all these random characters, you're like, I don't know what you're supposed to be to the story or what you're supposed to add that a previous character couldn't have added.
Yeah, isn't there like a duck called Bean? And there's Bang the Dynamite, one of them's called. I think he's like
then there's Big. Is it Big the Cat?
Big the
one?
Cat.
Oh, Big the Cat.
All legends.
You could literally by this stage just put an animal and a word together, and it has probably been a character in Sonic.
I should have done that. I could have asked you guys a quiz. Is this a real character or not?
You should have done a quiz for Craig. Is it a Sonic character or one of the characters from my videos on my YouTube channel?
Cream the Rabbit, that's one of them as well, isn't it? That's a Sonic character.
What are your thoughts on the newer, like the 3D games, Craig? Have you do you enjoy them to like the same degree, or are you like a long-suffering fan that's always getting your hopes up?
A long-suffering fan. So I loved Sonic Frontiers. I felt like that was the first 3D Sonic game that did what I think 3D Sonic games have been trying to do. I suppose because I didn't have a Dreamcast, I never really played Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 until they were released on the GameCube. So I sort of felt the 3D games just they didn't play like I imagined a 3D Sonic would. And I think that's where, when Mario goes 3D, you go, this is logical. This plays how I think a 3D Mario would play. But you play a 3D Sonic game, and I didn't think it would play like this. He's either really slow or so fast that you can't see where he's going. And the worlds are linear, which is so bizarre because I never think of the 2D worlds as being, they are linear because they're 2D, but I never think of them as being straight lines. But then you do them in 3D and you're stuck to this sort of, this track. And there's just no world on either side of them, which is such a bizarre, it's such a bizarre thing.
Would you like to quickly show off about your platinum, Craig?
I did get my first ever platinum trophy on the PlayStation for Sonic Frontiers because I've played it inside out, completed it back to front.
GG. Is it a difficult platinum? Was there any ridiculous tasks you had to do?
No, and I carried on even after I got it. I carried on doing stuff, thinking, well, there must be something else because there's all these memory tokens dotted all over the world map. There must be something else. Nothing. It wasn't that difficult to achieve. Then again, but it's still the first one I've got, and I've been playing 3D Sonic games for 20 odd years.
Yeah. Was there any of the 3D ones that you didn't finish?
I barely ever finished them.
Really?
I've completed. Yeah, I've never had the same fondness for 3D Sonic because I drifted away from Sega because I didn't have a Saturn. I didn't have a Dreamcast until much later in my life. And so Sonic for a long time just wasn't something I could play anymore until it started appearing on the Game Boy Advance.
They were so good, those ones as well. They were so good, those games.
And I just sort of drifted away from it. And obviously there was the last Mega Drive game was Sonic 3D Blast, and I think at that point I was like, something's changed, and it's not changed in a good way. And I think at that was the point I just drifted away from it. I just was like, this isn't what it was anymore. So I just there are very few Sonic games I haven't played, but I've never played through them like the way I've played through Frontiers, because you get to a point where you're like, I'm fighting with the game to play it the way it wants me to play it. So
yeah, I remember your disappointment in Sonic Forces, because it came out so close to Mania, and Mania was so good.
Yeah,
and then,
And I bought it on I bought it on the Switch, and I played it. I thought, oh, this isn't playing very well, but perhaps it's the platform. So I bought it on the PlayStation. I played it, and I was like, well, it's a slightly more playable, but it's still awful. So that was really, really, really disappointing. I will say, not as disappointing as when I got my PlayStation 3, and the first game I got for it, the only game I got for it, was Sonic 06.
Oh.
Because my mum's, I said for my birthday, she said you can have a PlayStation 3 for your birthday, but you can have one game with it. And I was like, Sonic, of course it's going to be Sonic. And that is the game I was stuck with on my PlayStation 3 for about 3 months.
Is that the one with the infamous kiss? Is that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I played a demo of that on the 360, and I don't think I finished the demo.
Oh man.
Yeah, it is bad. But I think by that point, I wasn't really expecting. I don't know what I was expecting by that point, because I played Sonic Heroes, and they weren't trying to be Sonic games that I knew anymore, which I sort of I understood, but I sort of knew that they weren't really making it for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ollie, why do you think Sonic is still so popular, considering like how, all over the place the quality of the games have been?
I think he's just a good character, isn't he? He's a good character that kids like, and then because the kids like him, when you get older, you still like him, because he's also got so many friends. It's almost like, kids like things that are in collections and lists. So like Sonic and his mates is like, oh yeah, I like Sonic, I like Tails. Like they all like one of them, and then they draw their own ones, which we're going to touch on very lightly. We're not going to go too deep into it. People draw their own characters. I think that's why it's enduring. Like, to be honest with you, the kids that like Sonic now, they can't afford to buy Frontiers. Like, they're not buying these 50 quid AAA games. I don't know if it is AAA. Craig's the only one that's finished it. Is it like AAA quality?
Compared to what?
Well, like compared to other AAA games, like Last of Us.
Compared to other Sonic games, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, anyway, I think they just like him. He's always on TV and stuff, isn't he? Like he's always on other media.
And then like the films were like a huge hit. Like, I wonder if there's like now for like people under like 7, there's probably way more fans of the films than like the games in terms of Sonic.
Yeah. I think he's got like 3 original Netflix series. Like, he's everywhere. Much more so than Mario. Yeah.
Which is strange considering, like, in terms of game output, like, there isn't really a comparison. Certainly after 2000, like, there's not really a strong argument that anyone could make there.
And he's cool, right? Like, he's spiky and he's blue, and like Mario's just like a little fat bloke. Like, really?
Yeah, like a plumber.
yeah.
Let's try and then. So, Craig, what I want you to do, try and strip back, like, the character of Sonic. Forget, like, the amazing art and, like, the music and, like, how, the technical, how impressive it was, like, the speed of it back in the day. But just, like, the core, like, mechanics of the gameplay, the way you control him and, like, the level design. Like, looking back at that now, like, do you think that really holds up?
I think when the game, there are parts of the game that I felt like the game just had this obsession with trying to crush me, which are things I don't remember now. But there are moments when it plays, when you think about Sonic, when it plays like it should play, some of the earlier zones, particularly where there are less obstacles, I just think it's still. There aren't many gaming experiences like it when you get that speed to the point where he's almost running off the screen. And I know that it is, you're not doing it, but I still think there's something really exhilarating about that I don't see that in many games. So those bits I think are still really unique.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like, I think the key word you said is there's like moments. There's like 15-second chunks where it all works out, and like everything you jump in the right place, and you know the game's almost predicting what you're going to do. I almost wonder whether Sonic would have made a better option for. Do you remember like Mario Run, the mobile game where you're kind of just pressing one button to do? I feel like Sonic would work really well with that, because you could go really fast, and then just you see an enemy and you jump, and then that will like launch you through a hole or into like a speed boost or something. I feel like that would work really well. I think maybe being able to turn like maybe the thing that kind of holds it back a little bit, because then they try and get a little bit too clever with some of the challenges, or like slow moving platforms, and really slow moving platforms that just kill the pace constantly.
The one thing that did stick out playing it this time around was like the music and the sound effects are like completely unmatched for like that time period. Like all the sounds of all the little things you hit, like even hitting a checkpoint and it makes the little like doorbell sounds, like all of them are amazing. Every single sound effect, picking up the bubble, I don't even know what that noise is. Like it's amazing. It sounds so good, and the music is like just incredible. Like I don't know what the Michael Jackson situation is, if like he did it or.
So when it's,
I mean this.
I did look into. Apparently, it's been confirmed as of 2022. Naka, who worked on the
Yuji
game,
Naka.
Apparently, in 2022, he confirmed that Michael Jackson did, write music for the game. They went to his ranch, apparently.
But he did he tweeted that, right?
I think it was in an interview I read.
Because he was having a pretty rough time around 2022 because he made Balan Wonderworld. Did you play that? Or remember that?
It
was like a 3D platformer that, it got like 3 out of 10 across the board. You own it, okay, good.
It didn't pass him in that one.
Yeah, so that went pretty bad. And I think since then, considering it was only last year, he's been to prison twice. So I don't know if he was just trying to say anything to like...
Get a bit of... have a story about him that isn't...
Yeah, exactly.
about what he's up to now. Okay.
Yeah, he's been arrested twice. He's also the producer of this game. Yeah, but he's been arrested twice for insider trading.
Oh, okay.
So like he'll buy stocks in Square Enix, and then Square Enix will announce a mobile game, and then he'll sell. So they're like, okay, you can't do that.
Yeah. I will say overall, I agree with what you're saying about the music. Apart from, I think it was Launch Base Zone, where it's kind of got like almost like, I can't remember if it's saying go or no or something repeatedly.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
and it's an awful song, that one. And then it also doesn't transition to loop. It just ends and then starts again, which kind of reminds you. And then on that level, I don't know if I was like soft locked, but I got to an area where you go in a cup and it will kind of spin round and like lift you up, where it had gone up without me. I think it's like tails went in it and went up and then came down, and it wouldn't respawn. And I was in an area where I couldn't like go off screen and go back to respawn it, and I ended up just having to quit the game. But I had a good 3 minutes or 4 minutes trying to work out if there is anything I can do to get it back down while listening to that song looping. And so that has tarnished my view on the music overall. That one song on loop.
Yeah, I think obviously there have been issues with re-releasing Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles for ages, so the music clearly has been an issue. But I don't necessarily think that I appreciated at the time the music. I used to love the ending theme from Sonic 2. And it used to play the game again and again just to hear that, because I love that. But I think I really appreciate now, particularly probably since Sonic Generations, when I heard Sky Sanctuary. I think that piece of music for me is just phenomenal. I love it. I think it is like it. I said that it's like the end of the series. That for me is like that Sky Sanctuary theme is. It feels like the end. You're coming to the end of something really big, and something huge, and it feels really. I love it, and I think now I enjoy the music much more. Particularly because, like Ollie said, you just appreciate it much more on a technical level. How much more they packed onto those cartridges. When I think the Sega voice chime took up a massive amount of space a lot of the time as well.
Like where it says Sega at the beginning, in the voice, it takes up an eighth of the cartridge memory.
That's crazy.
And they were like, yeah, we'll keep that. We'll keep that. So actually, I've got some trivia about that, actually. That originally, the Sega being shouted like that, Sonic 1 was supposed to include a music video that had a song about Sega on it with Sonic singing it. And then they had to cut it back so much because of the memory that the only thing they kept was the word Sega. And they scrapped all the rest of it.
Oh, really? I mean, you can think like that's so crazy that like such a high percentage of the storage of a game was for like an intro that you just brushed past. But I kind of think it was worth it because like even if people aren't into video games, they say Sega and they're like, oh, Sega, like it's so imprinted in everyone's minds. Like I kind of think it might have been worth it.
Yeah. Just on the music as well, I think Ice Cap Zone was an absolute banger. What an absolute blinder that zone was, because that was one that Craig warned me was changed in the Origins. So I was especially listening out for it when it came on. I was like, oh god, this is good. Like this is a proper like awesome song. There is one other song as well.
One of Michael's then, if they changed it.
Yeah, Michael is called vice versa. One of Mikey's.
Oh, yeah, that's probably one of M's.
One other thing on the music, but first of all, I have to read out a question because it's to do with this. Josh Iyer on Twitter. How do you pronounce the zone that begins with H and ends in city? I don't want to say it because I want to. Maybe Joe, if you don't remember, I'll write it in the.
No. I know what it is. I got it. Shall I go first, or do you want to go, Craig?
Yeah, you go first. Yeah.
I guess I'll go like Hydro City.
Will be Hydro City, but yeah. Craig?
Yeah, so it was always Hydro City to me, but I love Hydrocity because I actually think because it's like velocity and it makes so much. And then you look at the level and you're like, well, it's not a city. But then the titles of the zones didn't ever really relate necessarily to to what the zone was. But yeah, to me I always said Hydro City.
Yeah, as a kid I was Hydro City, but as an adult I think I'm fully Hydrocity. It sounds so cool. It sounds so much cooler than Hydro City. Anyway, the music on that stage absolutely
isn't it like a water level though, right? So surely the hydro is quite important.
Yeah, but it's like velocity and hydro.
Yeah, it does sound cooler.
Yeah. Also, is there any other Sonic levels that have the word city in it? Surely there must be.
Not from. So I've got them Sonic the Hedgehog 3 levels listed out here. There's not one in that. I don't know if there's one in Knuckles, that half of the game.
Yeah, or Sonic 2 or 1. No, maybe not. I'm just wondering if they would put a space there, because that's how you'd figure out if it was Hydrocity or Hydrocity.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I think some of the zones do have spaces, and some of them don't. There will be like temples and ruins and stuff, and they do separate them. So, but some of the title cards on the game had in the original games weren't the way they were supposed to appear. So it could also just be a mistake.
Yeah. Also, speaking of the mistakes, isn't it like a whole thing that all the levels are out of order?
Yeah. So, we're going to have to talk about my I've got a list in front of me of the zones, the ones I like, the ones I'm indifferent to, and the ones I despise. But Flying Battery, which I'm just going to say is the worst stage in any Sonic game I've ever played. I despise it. I hate it with a passion. Was supposed to be in Sonic 3, and then when you launch out of Flying Battery at the end, you were supposed to go into Ice Cap Zone, and the snowboard that you land on was the door from the Flying Battery Zone, but they had to change it. Because the level order it didn't flow, and they were going to split the games. And you think, I'm so glad that Flying Battery wasn't in Sonic 3 because it would have spoiled Sonic 3.
It was only this time round playing it. So after I played it when it came out, so it's been 29 years. I only just realised that Flying Battery is because it's a battery farm. I thought it was because it was a big battery, like a power source, but it's a battery farm. That's why it's called Flying Battery Zone.
I didn't realise that.
Because they're making the little capsules that you save the animals, they store the animals in. So, because they're all dotted around, and I was like, oh, it's actually quite a clever name.
It was quite cool as well.
I've always just so I've always just taken the names as they just need names, and it's a rough translation, and it will do.
Maybe you're doing your thing, Ollie, where you like really read into.
No, it's a flying battery. It makes sense, right? Like flying battery, like.
Also, it is cool the first time you pop one of those open, and then like all enemy like robots come out rather than like the animals. There's so many things. So it feels like in some ways it's cool, in some ways it seems a bit of a waste. But I feel like it was a really like inefficient way the way they developed these, because each act of each zone will have so many new ideas that are used like once or twice. And it'd be like a whole new mechanic, like, oh, it's like a sand waterfall that you can press jump to climb up, or like, oh, you can abseil if you do this. And the problem with it is, when they introduce it, they often introduce it at a time where you kind of really need to do it with right timing, and there's spikes. See, they never like teach you it first, and then they'll do something new, which will be similar, but it will look different, and it'll be a different way to speed boost you. But then they very rarely do like what Nintendo do, where they do the twist on it, where they'll teach you a new mechanic, and then they'll like let you learn how to do it in a safe area, and then they maybe will do it in a dangerous area, and then they'll do some sort of twist, combine it with another mechanic, or do it where you're underwater or something. Whereas in this game, it's like, oh, wouldn't it be really cool if he lands in an egg and that gets shot and then he bounces off this? They're like, yeah, we put that in this level. And it's like, okay, well, what's another idea? And so they're throwing stuff at you. And sometimes it's cool because you kind of have to work out this stuff quick, and it kind of fits with like the chaotic, frantic nature of a Sonic game. But it also kind of creates that stop-start nature, and you feel like the mechanics are often cool, but you never see their full potential. Do you think that sounds fair, Craig?
Yeah, I think Flying Battery is one of the worst zones for that, because you've got the little pads that flick you. Sometimes they flick you in the right direction, and sometimes you're running. Yeah. They flick you backwards. They're like little, I don't know what they are, like little tracks on the floor. And then you've got the cages that are rotating, and you're like, so you run around them, but you can come out the top or the bottom, and you've got the hangers that you can swing from, and the magnets that go up and down. And there's loads of ideas, but most of them just seem like they're there to try and slow you down and or kill you. And they are not of no consequence to the rest of the level. So I think I can definitely see how there are parts of the game where it's almost like there are so many ideas, and I think perhaps because they knew that they were going to go in a slightly different direction, they had they would have had unused concepts from Sonic 2, particularly in Sonic 1 and Sonic CD, and it just was like, let's put them all in here, even if they don't really fit. We'll just fill the whole game with them.
There's that sand level where they suddenly introduce you can like push blocks onto like these little conveyor belts and walk on them, and you like do it like twice, and it's just like you push the block and you stand there. It's like you've just added like being able to push blocks. Do you know how many doors and opportunities that opens? Yeah, and that you do literally nothing with it other than stand on the block as it very slowly moves twice. That's what you came up with. Like after you put the work in to allow like Sonic to move a sprite across the screen. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like they added so many animations, and like I would always be looking for like the animations being doubled up, and like they're not. Like they're just not really like, you know. The hanging on the bars, like the monkey bar thing, like you use that once, don't you? Like, and there's also swinging on a hanging vine. Like, they just use them once. It must take up so much memory, so many little sprites.
The amount of ways they have to make Sonic suddenly go fast with like a new device, new animation, new sound effect, and they all do the exact same function, but they fit in with each module. And it's like, it's commendable. In some way, it's awesome. You know, it'd be great if every game, you know, could be like that and be unique. But also, it's just like, why? Like, put that somewhere else. That time and effort.
I think just quickly on these crazy things, the best one by far is the abseiling. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Like when you're jumping down the side of the thing, holding onto the rope. And the worst one, which made me laugh every time, was like, a lot of the platforms are just kind of spinning, and you stand on them, and Sonic's just like... or like he gets closer to the screen, he's just like... I was literally looking at him like, he looks like such a lame-o. Like just standing there spinning.
It's really slow as well, isn't it? Do you kind of mentioned one of your worst... Oh, sorry, Craig.
Like, stuff like that. It is silly, but Sonic wasn't 3D at that point, so that was like the first time you saw the back of Sonic, or because you'd only ever seen him from one position. So suddenly you could see, he's got like, look at his spikes at the back, and look how he looks from a different angle, because you'd only ever seen him from one side. So as much as it looks silly, it was also developing the whole model more, so that you really understood how the character existed in 3 dimensions.
I kept flying.
You've really turned that around, haven't you?
Yeah, you saved that. I kept flying as Knuckles towards the camera, and like going left, because it made him look really goofy. He would go down really slow. Was there any like what's your standout levels then? You mentioned like your least favorite. What's your like favorite moment, favorite boss, or whatever, Craig?
So my favorite zones, I always think the first zones. So you've got Angel Island and sort of Mushroom Hill as the 2 first zones. I always think they're the best in terms of showing what the game can do. I think particularly Angel Island, I think it plays really well, as it plays really, really quickly, but there's quite a lot of new gimmicks in it. So, he can swing around vines, and he can go all the way around, and you've obviously got the introduction of the shields that were new to the game, and it gives you a chance to try them all out. So I think that's a really, really well designed level. And same with Mushroom Hill, although it was using the same sorts of things. It's like, no, you're going to have to, like, you've got to use your speed to get out of this trap. There are traps that you can't run from. They sort of stitch your feet, and you've got to spin. And I think they're really, I have really strong memories of playing them. And obviously because Sonic 3, you could obviously have a save, but Sonic and Knuckles didn't. I just played through them. I think they are muscle memory. I can still go through them, and I can see what's coming next. I almost don't need to look at the screen because it's so there. But I think Hydrocity, however we're saying it. I think that it's a water level, but I think the speed in that, when you get the ramps that spin you round and you run across the top of the water, I think the speed in that is really good. And I think Sky Sanctuary as well, although it's pretty much the opposite to that, because you're doing a lot of stopping and starting, and there's badniks popping out of everywhere to try and, I think the whole atmosphere of it is, this huge game is starting to come to an end, and this is sort of, you're coming to the final few bosses, and the whole thing just feels really like, almost like a victory lap of the whole series.
Yeah.
So true. I think those definitely are like the standouts for me.
I really like the there was 2 zones. I don't know what they're called. I don't have the names in front of me, but one of them was the one where like it's like a temple kind of thing, and you grab onto these hoops and they like drag you up, like slide you up the walls.
Oh, Marble Garden.
Yeah, I like that one. That was wicked. And the other one I really liked, which I don't have the name for again, it's like in a volcano, and it ends Lava Reef. Oh man, when it ends and the lava like solidifies and you run across the top of it, I was like, this is so cool. Like, just that for some reason really got me. I thought it was wicked. But yeah, those 2, and also obviously also the opening levels are amazing with like the fire bombing and all that.
Yeah.
Jay?
I agree. I think probably like Angel Island, obviously, just because like I like it because you can go really fast, but you feel like you're in control for a lot of it. Like it's just because it's easy. Like they haven't like the obstacles aren't so dense. Like obviously it's kind of a nice spectacle when you're just getting like bounced randomly. And you're like, I don't know which way I'm gonna go. It's just quite fun, like seeing that. But it's that doesn't stay fun forever. So I do like those early areas because you're fast and you're in control of it. I actually really liked. I can't remember what it's called, but the sand level that Ollie hated.
Sandopolis.
Yeah, I thought that one was, I don't know, maybe I just got lucky that I didn't get like stuck on it, and I thought it had like a cool boss, like when it's like all the sand waterfall in the background and the temple comes down and the boss comes out. I believe that was the one with the abseiling on it. I think it might have been that level as well.
It is,
yeah. So
that's also the one that's got the sand filling up.
Yeah.
And I died right at the end of that bit, and the checkpoint was right at the start of that bit, so it sent me back, which is quite
I see how I could have not had a good time with it, but I think I got through it quite easy. And it added, like I was saying, lots of those unique ideas that aren't used much, but I think they were all, like, none of them were bad, I don't think. So I enjoyed that one, even though it wasn't a particularly fast one. It was more of a thinker one. I did enjoy that.
Did you, Joe, particularly, did you get stuck on that red barrel on the Carnival Night Zone? That moves up and down.
I can't remember a red barrel, so I will.
Okay.
I will try and hunt
That's
through my
like-
footage to see if I did. But it
No,
hasn't
no,
stuck
no.
out
You
in
would
my
remember.
memory. Okay.
You would remember if you did. It's like a famously just annoying thing where like you basically have this red barrel that goes up and down when you jump on it. But like what you're meant to do is press up and down on your controller and it moves it. But a lot of people just jump on it and try and like.
Oh yeah, I know. I do remember taking it. Yeah, I worked it out. I worked it out to press up and down, but I did spend a while jumping up and down. But yeah, it wasn't.
So it's like
a
another
long
of those
time.
gimmicks that is never anywhere else in the game.
Yeah.
No other move in Sonic requires you to press up and down like that.
Yeah.
But then they put it at a really critical point in the game where you can't get past the stage without doing it.
Yeah, that's a great way to sum up their design philosophy. Have an idea, like let's talk through the idea. No, put it in. Just put it in. Yeah, okay. Right, next one. New ideas.
It's so weird because it was a revelation to me that was a thing. I never remember that being an issue when I played it through, but then I do wonder whether that's because I played Sonic and Knuckles first, and you've got those hanging things that you have to press up and down to make them
But
lift
there's
you.
like two little
And
handles.
I just wonder whether instinctively when I got there I just thought, oh, up and down because that's the only way I can go. But it was a revelation to me. I don't remember it being a thing at the time that the barrels were. But people were writing into magazines and saying, "Is my game broken? I don't understand how to get past this stage." You can't go on the internet and look it up.
Yeah, it's really unclear because you're standing on it, so it's just like there's nothing like what would be happening in that situation to make it move.
Yeah.
It makes like
particularly because the other ones go back and forward, side to side, and you can't do that with those, and they're exactly the same design.
Yeah, and I'd always get confused when you're going really fast and you start going like you'd loop around and be going back on yourself. I'm like, should I carry on holding the button I was to go fast, or do I? Because often I'd be like, oh, I was running right to left, and now I'm running left to right, and so I'd press left, and then I'd suddenly kill my momentum and I'd drop. I was like, oh, it wanted me to carry on holding the direction, even though I'm not going that direction. I mean, that is just, I think it's just inherent with, either way they do it, some people will get it wrong, whether they want you to switch or not.
It's just a 2D version of when you're in a 3D game and you walk through a door and you're on the other side of the door and you're still holding it and you end up going back through the door again because you've got to change the direction. It's just
like the fixed camera.
It's just a 2D version of that.
Yeah,
I press down. If I don't know which way to press, I press down, turn into a ball, and just let him do his thing.
Yeah,
let him. Because it's basically invincible. Thing. Yeah. We did get quite a lot of questions. And I've just sat here and deleted quite a lot of them because we've covered them already, unfortunately, because we've had quite an in-depth talk. But I do have 4 questions for you here. This one, Craig, I'm going to ask you. I think you'll like this.
Okay.
Lamb TDM on YouTube says, would you rather be able to punch like Knuckles or fly like Tails?
I'll fly like Tails every time.
Yeah, but Knuckles can kind of...
No, I think Tails gets the best of both worlds. I was thinking about it, like which is the best character to play through. Yeah, okay, yeah. Sonic's speed actually. I much like this is like my favorite game. Sonic's speed isn't actually unique to Sonic in the games because Tails and Knuckles can run just as fast. So actually, Tails can fly and Knuckles can glide, and so Tails can go everywhere. Knuckles can go pretty much.
But he can't punch.
He can't, but Knuckles can't punch in the game, so he can run through walls. But the whole, like, you read the instruction manual, it's like, yeah, Knuckles is going to punch his way through the game. You can't punch. You can't like grand slam or anything like that. It's just you can run into some walls and they break.
Yeah. You could do that now if you wanted.
If you're fast enough.
Yeah, and also, although the thing is with Tails' flying is he does get tired quite quickly, so it is kind of a glide in a way. You could get up somewhere, but then you'd have to land.
Yeah, but
Joe.
He glides back. He glides, yeah.
I would rather be able to fish like Big the Cat, personally, if I had to make a choice.
No one ever said they wanted to be like Big the Cat. Ever.
I'd rather be able to carry a gun like Shadow. So.
Oh, God.
Oh. Carry a handgun.
Our conversation about whether Knuckles was cool, I guess we got the obvious not cool one as well to go.
Yeah. Okay. So, Joe, this one's for you, really, because you're newer to the game. Goldfield03 on Discord said, "What's your opinion on the momentum-based gameplay style of this game? Do you like it, or do you think that the idea that you're meant to build speed and have the skill to keep that speed going while staying on the top path for better rewards and an easier time is poorly explained to someone who doesn't know what Sonic the Hedgehog is like?"
I don't think it's poorly explained because I think it's just everyone knows Sonic's about speed. Like, I don't think the level design rarely matches that philosophy for someone's first playthrough. I feel like if you could learn it and you could go first, I feel like the game mechanics of going fast and the level designs, like even by Sonic's Free, like where they've had a few attempts at it, I feel like it doesn't match, and that's where I think the majority of my problems with the game comes from.
Yeah, Craig, you got any thoughts on that?
So I always think when I think about the momentum, I didn't ever really feel like Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles had the same momentum base. I know you can get quicker times by going along the top, but for me, the momentum is actually probably best in Sonic 1, where you didn't have the speed dash, and you got that sense of, if you like going through Green Hill, if you got it right and you timed the loops and the jumps, you could get a really satisfying sense of momentum. I don't feel like I don't feel that you get that same sensation in Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 Knuckles because of the spin dash. It doesn't ever feel quite as special as it does in, like, you get a decent run through Green Hill Zone and bouncing off the enemies and just hitting the loops at the right time. That's I think was so well designed, but it was only for a couple of zones, because then you end up walking around most of the time and not able to build momentum at all.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered the spin dash. Because in the first Sonic, you remember having to run backwards to get enough speed to get up a ramp.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can just hold down and press the button, can't you? For me, it's I don't feel like there's any clear signifier that you're on the top. So I would get to the top and then be like, well, I need to go higher because I don't know if I'm at the top. And there's not really any there's no landmarks in Sonic. So every area, I couldn't pick my way for a level. I wouldn't be like, oh, up there is the fire shield, because they all kind of look, within the zones, they all kind of look the same. There's only so many patterns and things like that. So yeah, I've always known that you're meant to go along the top, but I've never been able to successfully do it. But I obviously had a hard time with this game because I didn't finish it. So
I think in Sonic 3 Knuckles, I think they definitely used the presence of water a lot more to signify that you were along the bottom. And obviously no one wants to go in the water because that's not what Sonic's about. So I think they did use that. It was a lot clearer, certainly, that you were close to the bottom of the level. But I think, I agree that when you're at the top of the level, it's not clear that you're at the top at all.
Yeah. Okay. Muppet86 on the Discord asks, I'd be interested to hear how you found the special stages to get the Chaos and Super Emeralds. Revisiting the game, I found that my muscle memory kicked in and I could navigate them perfectly. But if someone was new to the game, I could imagine them being quite frustrating. So, Joe, as a new player, how were those round bonuses?
So the ones where you were behind the camera and you're trying to get all the blue orbs. So the first couple of times I just messed up immediately because I didn't know what was going on. I just went straight into a block before I realized. But once I kind of just worked out how they work, the last 2 or 3 of them, I just got perfectly and got the Chaos Emerald. It's quite easy once you do it. I feel like it's I don't like the speed that it does a 90-degree turn of the camera, and the fact that you're doing them so back to back is quite horrible to look at. Maybe on a CRT screen it wouldn't be as as bad. But those are fine. But then a lot of the other ones, it would introduce it'd be special stage, and it'd be a bunch of orbs and there's weird gravity on them, and then suddenly I've died, and I was I didn't have enough time to work out what the mechanic was, let alone what I had to do. So any of those other ones I just failed immediately.
Craig, muscle memory, was it? Do it with your eyes shut?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely it does feel different. It does feel different than it used to. I noticed the movements because they've sort of cleaned up the frame rate. It's much smoother, and suddenly you're it's turning much quicker than I expected to. And then the speed, when you get down to about 20 or 30 spheres, and the speed suddenly changes, and there's no real indication that the speed is going to change. Yeah. So you play it for a little bit, and you're okay, I get the movement, I get how quickly I'm going to have to turn, I get how how the jump works, and then you just end up charging forward. You're like, hang on a minute, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
But I played it so many times that I just anticipate that's going to happen. But I imagine playing it. I remember at the time thinking, these are so difficult because you almost have to memorize the pattern that you're going for, especially in Sonic and Knuckles, when you've got ones where you have to jump over a red sphere to jump onto a spring to jump into the next section.
Oh
and you
god,
just have
yeah,
to completely,
the gold sphere, right, and it bounces you.
It bounces you, and there's I think the final bonus sphere stage to get the 7th emerald requires you to bounce, hit a bumper, and collect the spheres backwards, and then stop and turn, and then carry on again.
Oh, nah. Doing that and instantly losing, getting kicked out.
And then, of course, if you had the game at the time and you just wanted to plug any other cartridge in, you could just play endless blue sphere levels if that was your thing.
Oh yeah, I did that as a kid. Yeah, and also you could plug in like another Sonic game in it, or maybe not a Sonic game, and it gave you like a really horrible screen of like the characters standing there, and it was like, this is not compatible, and he'd be like tapping his foot. Yeah, I remember it like really freaking me out as a kid. But yeah, just quickly on those bonuses. Not confirmed by anyone, but my little theory is they might be inspired by Pac-Man. Because like the noise of picking up the dots and moving around a maze, it's pretty close to Pac-Man, I think. But I don't know. I'm just completely guessing. Okay. Let's do one more. I'm going to guess this name, I'm sorry, as Bignon TFI on YouTube. Joe, this one's for you. I think that 2D Sonic games are too repetitive and should have shorter zones. Did you feel this way, or is my Gen Z attention span the problem?
I don't think the stages, I don't think they're repetitive at all. I think, as we kind of discussed earlier, there's huge variety, but I think the levels were too long. We kind of touched on it a little bit. Like, I think live systems are out of date. It came up on a previous podcast on Kiro Blaster. Like, if you fell to a boss on Act 2, putting you right back to the beginning of the zone is just like, it's just annoying at that point. Like, I'm going to have to replay it, and then you end up rushing to get back, so you end up dying more because you're rushing and not taking it seriously. I think, giving yourself infinite lives, I think, would make it better. So I think a big reason why I didn't like the long levels was because of the live system. But yeah, in terms of, I didn't find it samey at all. I think one of its strengths is the constant variety and music and style of zones and gameplay mechanics.
And you got anything on that, Craig?
I suppose in hindsight, you sort of know roughly what length they're going to be, but I certainly remember at the time finding that there were zones, especially towards the end of the game, that are really long, and then you've got a boss fight that you have to wait for it to do something before you can strike, and therefore the stage itself shouldn't have been that long. Like the Sandopolis zone, if you have to wait for that Guardian, it only takes like a minute, but if you've got to wait for the Guardian to jump across to you into the quicksand, you've got no way of really speeding that up other than just standing and waiting. And like the one in Carnival Night, you've just got to wait for the propeller to whiz round until it hits the thing. So I think I do think there are stages that are long and then have boss fights that are really unforgiving with a 10-minute time limit.
Yeah. For me, it was like looking up at the time and seeing that it was 7 minutes and being like, oh my God, I've been running around this place for 7 minutes. Like, I think there was one bit on Sandopolis where you continuously going down slides and you have to jump off at a certain point. It took me 4 minutes. 4 minutes of watching him. I started to feel sick. I was like, oh God, he's still going around. Okay, one more question, but it's just from me. Jump in if you've got an answer. Is Sonic the only character with his own theme music for drowning?
I mean, Craig,
you'll
be the one to know. I mean, I never drowned with anyone. I never drowned with anyone else.
It is in what in the Sonic games or just in general?
In any game. Like when you think about Sonic drowning, he has music. Like it's so weird that like he has his own theme song for drowning.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be an old game, right? Like because Tomb Raider, there's not music for that. It's just a noise
it's
she makes.
Mad, isn't it? That they've done that for him.
Yeah, I mean, Mario, I guess with the way he dies and the way he kind of jumps up on the screen is a unique thing for when he drowns. But
and he can't drown. Mario can't drown. 2D Mario.
Can he not?
No, he's got unlimited breath.
Oh.
He's Italian.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. He's a plumber. They love water.
He's a plumber.
Yeah, I mean, there's
no,
not. I
it's
mean,
sort of
anyone
like
give us a shout in the comments if you can think of one. See if we've missed one.
I think when it started, in Sonic 1, when you had the Labyrinth Zone, the colour palette, when the bubbles popped up, it wasn't always clear that they were there. So you needed that music to signify a change, because because you weren't really looking at that. You were focusing on what you were trying to do and looking ahead, looking at the spikes, looking at whatever. And then I still found even in Sonic 3 Knuckles, there's times I'm like, the bubble's there telling me I'm literally about to die, because you just lose focus on it. So I think that was a really good way of introducing that. But I can't think of any other game developer that made such a big fuss over their character dying.
Well, it adds so much more tension. Like the countdown by itself would add some tension, but the music makes it way more intense.
There's a good joke about it in Sonic Generations, because you go back to Chemical Plant Zone as the new Sonic and Tails, and they don't, because basically in Sonic Generations, the 2D one and the 3D one are different people or different hedgehogs, and Tails is like, oh, I want to get out of Chemical Plant Zone. He's like, that pink water's making me nervous, and I don't know why. Which I thought was quite a good joke. Is it time to list it?
Yeah. Is there anything else you need to say, Craig, or should we rank it?
Oh my god! So I just have to try and convince you one more time of why this is so good.
Well, you'll be there during the ranking if you want to.
I know, but
okay.
But I just sort of, I think what I didn't really appreciate fully at the time, that I really appreciate now is how much of a story it was trying to tell for the type of game it was at the time. And it's really easy to play it through and just go, oh, it was a Sonic game. But there's so many little touches about what's going to happen at the end of the game, that when you go to the hidden palace and you fight Knuckles, and there's a big tapestry on the back that's showing what's going to happen in the final stage. And it's not perfect storytelling, because there are bits even now I'm like, oh, I didn't know they were trying that. I didn't really get that from the plot. But I think compared to most other 2D platformers that just told a self-contained story, and often just via the instruction manual with no text at all, I think it achieves so much in terms of trying to tell a story with characters that didn't have voices at the time.
Yeah, I mean, compared to like what castle is like Princess Peach in? Like, I mean, that's
another,
like
she's
the
another
major competition at the time. Like, yeah, that's absolutely true. And something that, you know, when I think of 2D Sonic games, like the last thing I'd think of was story, and the fact that, you know, obviously compared to modern games, it's very, very light, but the fact that they had as much, and like the cutscenes are like, you know, for what they are, they're pretty cool. Like they're done pretty well. They get a lot of character into very short animations with their sprites.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously you lose playing the two games together. You lose the narrative of the Death Egg taking off at the end of Launch Base and then crashing down onto the island, onto Lava Reef, onto the top of it. But so then you've got the Death Egg on top of the Lava Reef zone in Sonic and Knuckles. You're like, that's why it's there, because we stopped it at the end of the first game and it crashed. And again, it doesn't always come across when the games are played as one. But I just think there was a real attempt to tell a story that a lot of games just didn't attempt. And so I really, really appreciate that, even if by the standards of today it's fairly simplistic. But I think that I think that should be taken into consideration as an artistic endeavor.
How many times did you have to say Death Egg until you managed to do it without smiling?
Well, I'd never seen Star Wars, so I didn't get it at all. I didn't. I remember the first time I saw Star Wars, thinking, "Why are they using the Death Egg? Like, why are they using the Death Egg design?"
Like Star Wars is ripping off Sonic, ripping off the Death Egg.
I didn't. I had no association at all that's what it was doing. So I was a bit like, that blew my mind a little bit. And I was like, that is not a very good joke now that I know it. But yeah, the time's like, what? They're in the Death Egg? That doesn't make sense. They're not the same thing.
Also, he was like Death Egg before he was Eggman. Like, he was obviously thinking about eggs a lot before he decided to change his name from Robotnik to Eggman to have the Death Egg. Did he have any other egg-related
So a lot of the machines that he used had sort of egg related names, but I don't think the whole egg thing was just it wasn't really it just sort of it was just a thing. It was like, oh, he's round, so he's an egg. Like
yeah.
There was no, it wasn't established that was some sort of character trait or that eggs tied into his existence in any way whatsoever. It was just like, oh yeah, it's eggs because he's round.
Yeah, that was the level we were operating on it in the 90s.
Just quickly before we go to the list, do you want to just mention that boss name, Craig, that you text me, because it's quite funny?
Yeah. So do you remember the one in Hydrocity, where Dr. Robotnik comes in, he whips up the water and it creates a spout, and you have to like jump on it to hit him. So that was like called the Egg Vortex. But in the UK, I was looking through the old Sonic the comics, and they just sort of interpreted the names as they saw them. So that one they called Dr. Robotnik's Water Spout and Depth Charge Machine. So
Dr. Robotnik's Water Spout is so good. It's like the least threatening thing ever, isn't it? It's so pathetic. Right.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
List time. Let's do it.
Right, okay, so we have the list up, but before we jump into that, we have just found out that Craig has something special for Ollie because it's his birthday. Or almost his birthday as we're recording
32
this.
years young. Yeah.
I hope this shows. I can't tip it, but so I've got some little cakes for it. It's a little bit of candle on top.
Yeah. Shall I blow that out? There you go.
There we go. But I've made some little cakes with some little
I can't see them because of the put them in front of put them like they got Sonic on them.
Yeah. So loads of cakes and
tails there.
Tails.
It's like that rotating platform to get them in.
It really is.
It rotates them in. So, there we go, Knuckles. Nice.
And then I made, because I ran out of designs. I made a little. Like the Chaos Emeralds.
Right. Okay.
There you go.
Did you make a Death Egg
if
one?
you can imagine, that's the no. I didn't have time for that.
I hope you didn't use a Death Egg to make it.
But I did not. But if you can imagine that they're all around the plate and the Chaos Emeralds are in the middle.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'll eat them and enjoy them. But
you eat them,
happy birthday.
I don't think they'll travel very well to my house, so you enjoy them.
I don't think they'll travel well. I only put the tops on at an hour ago, and they already look like they're melting, so they're definitely not going to travel. I'm not sure they'll eat well either.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. Joe, what have you got for me?
I've actually got something awesome for you. I mean, I could show you it now. It is here. But I mean, I'm going to see you on person on your birthday. What would you prefer?
Well, I don't know what it is, so it's difficult. Is it not worth showing on camera?
I mean, it would be kind of cool to show it on camera. It's just would it spoil the surprise for your birthday? I'll leave it in your hands.
No, it's a surprise now. It would still be a surprise. It's a surprise now. I'm just getting it now.
Okay,
I don't know
right.
what it is
Yeah,
now, yeah. Go grab it.
I can it's literally right here.
Craig, I'm sorry if are you feeling a little bit upstaged?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay. Okay, good. Your face, you looked a bit like it was staged.
No, it's fine. Just source those Sonic the Hedgehog cake toppers. They're not.
Yeah, your
present
present was lovely, and I'm sure Joe's will be equally lovely.
Mine wouldn't taste as nice. So it's actually quite good. It's actually quite relevant to the podcast because I got you a little frog detective.
Oh my god, a frog detective! That's going on that shelf right behind me.
I'll let you open it. I'll leave it in the plastic for you because the bag's quite cool.
Free him from his prison. That is amazing. You played that? Oh, yeah.
There's something in here as well. Would you like me to open this for you?
Maybe keep that one as a surprise.
Okay, this one will be a surprise. Make sure you follow the bonus points on Twitter to see Ollie tweet what it is.
Yes. Oh, thank you, mate. And the cakes are lovely that I can't eat, but I saw equally good.
Hey.
Yeah. Right. Let's do this list business then.
Okay, right. List is back up. So, yeah, Craig. Before we jump in, we like to ask our guests just kind of if you could rate our list as a whole. Are there any games that you feel like are too high, too low? You're happy that this game is on the list?
My taste in games is very, very niche. I'm very into platforms, so anything like The Last of Us, I'm like, well, that's an interactive movie, so that doesn't really count for me. So I think that's far too high, personally. But
okay.
We got like Yoshi's Island. Did you play Yoshi's Island?
Yeah, no. So I was thinking it must have come out around the same time as Sonic and Knuckles. Actually, Donkey Kong Country came out at the same time as Sonic and Knuckles. But it was in my Mega Drive phase then, so I didn't ever play Yoshi's Island probably until it was re-released for the DS?
Yeah, they made another one for DS. Yeah.
Oh, did they? So I did obviously watch your episode on it, and it did look amazing, and I was a bit like, I wish my game looked a bit like that. But anyway. I think other than narrative based games, they just aren't for me. I find them I find them far too. I mean, I'm trying to skip through the cutscenes of Sonic, so that tells you how much patience I'd have for The Last of Us.
Yeah, the bottom end of the list, Craig. You look Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, Beyond Good and Evil. They're all kind of platformers.
Yeah, Sonic's going to have loads of friends.
Yeah. Ratchet and Clank. I really enjoyed that. The Harry Potter games, again, they weren't what I wanted a Harry Potter game to be at the time. I wanted a Harry Potter game where I could go to Hogwarts. So I felt like it was just, here's a really basic game and we're just going to put Harry Potter over it. The worst type of licensing. And I don't think I ever played Ty.
Oh, don't.
No,
it's so bad.
Well, I can tell if it's down that far, it wouldn't be top of my list to play.
Apparently, the sequels are okay, but that's the one we played.
I struggle to believe that. I can't believe there's 4 of them.
Right, Ollie. So I feel like this is going to be one we're going to have a bit of a difference between, just because I feel like you're a bit more of a Sonic fan, and I'll be like, I really did appreciate this game. Like, I wouldn't have finished it if it wasn't for the podcast. Like it's just not my kind of game. But as I say, I've never been more hype on Sonic as I was an hour ago when I finished it. And that boss fight with Mecha Sonic, the way he lands and sometimes will stand there and sometimes does like that slide backwards and stuff. There's some really like smart mechanics. Almost kind of give me almost like Hollow Knight vibes, like some of the like remembering those patterns and stuff. Like, so that was as hype as I've ever been for Sonic. But compared to some of the other games on the list, it's still just not for me, I don't think.
Yeah, I think for me then, I mean, Craig, I'm assuming you'd put it at number 1.
I mean, on your list, I would. I wouldn't sit here and say it's the best game ever. But of the games you're offering to me, of course it would be top of the games.
Okay. I think for me, it would probably have to go around 17, 18, 19. So I think I enjoyed Phoenix Wright more. And I enjoyed Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The thing is, Sonic 3 and Knuckles in my head was a lot better than it was playing it again. Because I really struggled on those 2 sections. It's really soured the whole thing. Like, it's not very often I don't finish the game, but I was so annoyed by this one that I was like, I can't do it anymore. Like, I literally can't sit here and fight this boss anymore. So, yeah, I think for me, around there, it can't go above Resident Evil.
Above Kiro Blaster?
Yeah, I think it's a different sort of game, isn't it? The pace of Kiro Blaster is so like meditative. Have you ever played it, Craig?
No. Meditative.
It's on Switch. It's on Switch. And it's a platformer. You might like it. Play as a frog.
I love you brought me on and you asked me these questions about all these games. I'm like, if it was made between 1991 and 1996, I've probably played it in some form. But if it's been made any time after that, the likelihood is I bought it, pre-ordered it, bought it, and played it for 15 minutes. and then never played it again.
And also, literally no one's ever heard of Kiro Blaster that I've ever spoke to. I hadn't heard of it until Ollie told me we're playing it.
Yeah. I mean, out of this list, that's not the one I'd recommend to you, Craig. That would be Mr. Driller Drill Land on the Switch, because that game is perfect.
I have played that. I think I played it based on your recommendation, and I really like the art style, but I didn't really understand what the game wanted me to do other than go down. And
That's what you do.
You got it. That's.
I was like, oh, okay. I've gone down, and now I'm going down in the next level. And
yes, that's what you do.
Okay.
Anyway, in Sonic, you go right.
see.
It's just the same. You just go down. It's the same thing. Anyway.
I suppose in principle.
Anyway, 18, 19, 20, I'm thinking for this. Joe?
Yeah, so like I enjoyed Zero Ranger more than it.
Ooh.
So I'm closer I'm weighing up whether it beats Onimusha. I think it does beat Onimusha. I think it's absolutely a better game than Onimusha, but I enjoy the style of Onimusha more. I think like it is definitely achieving what it set out to do. Like I just love like we didn't even speak about it much, but just the art and just the vibe and like the colorful skies. Like I'm looking at like your like background, Craig, and it just is like it's just so happy and nice and like and positive. And I think that really goes a long way. But like you were kind of saying, Ollie, that's like when I think of Sonic, that's what I think of. But then when I play Sonic, that's like a very different matter, and that's kind of what we're putting the game as a whole. And then I think of the gameplay of Zero Ranger, which in its own right had like amazing artwork and like really good music, like kind of rivaling Sonic in terms of music. But then I just kind of found it a little bit more interesting, like the way that the story goes, the way they mash up like other genres into it, and you kind of never really understand what's happening, and then it can delete your game save at the end. Like I think overall Zero Ranger's a more interesting game, and I think I enjoyed it more. Yeah,
just for a quick heads up on Zero Ranger, because not many people saw the episode, and Craig, you've probably never even heard of it. It's basically like a shoot 'em up. Plays a little ship flying around. Has like NES graphics, but like it tries to like flip your expectations. Like it does different things. Like there's a narrative level. There's like this whole thing where it's like deletes your game save if you don't beat the final level on your first attempt. It will like completely erase all of your progress. It has amazing music. The artwork is great. It only uses 2 colors and it still looks incredible. Like the game's really cool. So that's Zero Ranger in a nutshell, really.
And that also makes it clear like we both love this game, so I know like where Sonic is now doesn't necessarily mean it's going to end up, but it's not like bottom of the list it's rubbish. Like most of like we are picking games generally that we think are going to be good, so like apart from the very bottom, like these are all like we think good games. But I mean personally I think I'd put it one under Zero Ranger, so it would be 75 on the list, so in between Zero Ranger and Onimusha.
You mean 25?
Yeah, 25. So what did I say?
75.
Did I say 75?
You did. Yeah.
Where
just get ahead of yourself. So just give yourself another couple of years.
Yeah.
Just to fill in the gap between. Get a bit of space down. God, that's crazy.
Okay. I agree with you on Zero Ranger. I mean, maybe Zero Ranger needs to move up.
Yeah, I know. That's as you were explaining Zero Ranger, I was like, wait, why is it down so low? But yeah, but there's a lot of great games in between as well.
I mean, it could move up to just above Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that, to be honest.
Let's do that.
Yeah, so that's going to be, it's going up above Beginner's Guide and Ratchet and Clank. It's just jumped up.
Yeah, and then Sonic 3 and Knuckles can go underneath Beginner's Guide.
Yeah, should it, what about above Beginner's Guide?
Or above Beginner's Guide, yeah.
Yeah, like I've softened a little bit. Like the more, like the Beginner's Guide has come up a few times in our list discussions previous it, and the thing we always end up bringing up like the stuff we didn't like about it and like the ending of it. I still think it's a cool, interesting game to check out. But I'd be happy for Sonic to go above it.
Cool. Okay, well it's above it. I think we're settled.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, Craig, you didn't get top 5 like you wanted.
I mean that's my whole nostalgia. That's my childhood. That's everything I've built my life on there. Sits at at 24, and Joe was trying to put it at 75, and then stick another 50 games in ahead of it.
75. It's 75 out of 33 games, unfortunately.
It's so bad. It has to go beyond the bottom, and we'll just fill it up with other stuff.
When Beyond Good and Evil went on, it went beyond the bottom of the list. So that's why there's a gap above it. Because it doesn't have an invert option, so Joe couldn't play it. The invert camera.
Was that a no? You couldn't play it?
So, like, so looking up and down will be flipped, like inverted. Yeah. So I play games inverted, and it didn't have, like, that as an option, which meant the entire, like, I completed it, but the whole game, I was, like, struggling to control the camera because I kept going in the wrong way. Then, obviously, I'd be playing other games at the same time, and so that, like, my mind was completely messed up. Like, that's not it was, well, we didn't rate it anyway, but that was, like, the nail in the coffin that pushed it under tie and some of the other games.
Oh, this is why camera angles just didn't matter when I was growing up. It weren't a thing. You had one angle, and that was all you could see the game through. It was never an issue, apart from when you couldn't see what was coming next. And Sonic was particularly guilty of that in places. This one slightly less so, but definitely Sonic 1 is definitely guilty of having one camera angle and tricking you all the time.
Poor Sonic as well. He can see the spikes, and he's like, "Please stop pressing right because I'm running straight for him."
So do you think we were fair at least, Craig? Like, I gave it a super, like, solid shot.
I think it's so hard to disassociate the games from how I experienced them growing up and how I remember them. I have such strong memories about probably some of the earliest memories of my life are playing these games and what I was doing at the time and who I was friends with at the time. And I think a lot of that, when I play it, I relive that when I'm playing it. I think I actually said to Ollie, when I played through Sonic Origins the first time after Sonic Mania and what that game did with the 2D games, I played Sonic 3 and Knuckles and I was like, it doesn't do what that game did. It's nowhere near as imaginative. Like, the fire shield doesn't burn things, and there's so much that I sort of saw it almost. It was really the first time I'd ever seen it like that. So begrudgingly, as much as I could never ever disassociate what it represents for me and my life. I do see how you might play it now and be like, it's a 24 type of game.
Yeah. Joe had the same thing with Warcraft growing up as a kid. He loved Warcraft, and that's number 19 on the list. So it's a cruel mistress, the list, isn't it?
Yeah, I hate it when it's with a game. If it's Ollie's pick, like I almost enjoy picking it apart. But when it's when it's a guest, like we like invite them on the show, like I always, if I finish it and I'm like, oh man, I know it's not going to be that high up, and it's like going to be probably their favorite game. It's like it kind of hurts.
Yeah. Also though, it might stay there. When we add other games, it might not move that much. Some games like Mr. Driller has kind of stayed around, and Forgotten City and Skyrim have kind of stayed around the same area because they get moved up.
Yeah. And you may end up having a discussion in like a couple of months. You'll be like, Sonic 3 Knuckles down there, but remember Dr. Robotnik's water spout, and remember the japes we had with that game. Let's bump it up a little bit. So
yeah, well, it just happened with another game. You've seen how it can happen. How fickle we are in terms of our rankings.
Mention of the water spout is making me think maybe it should go up a bit higher.
Maybe the water spout should push it up above Ratchet and Clank. Oh dear. Do you want to read out just for audio listeners, just kind of the little area that it's in, just so people can see how the list is settled?
Sure. So we've had a little move around. So now number 21 is the Frog Detective, 22 is Zero Ranger, 23 is Ratchet and Clank 2016, 24 is Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and 25 is The Beginner's Guide.
Okay, and what's at 74? Sorry, I'm
your brain age, mate. That's what's at 74.
Yeah. Oh dear. Right though, so that's the list as it's gonna stand now. Do you want to kind of talk about what games are coming up, Ollie?
Yes. So next time on March 10th, we've got BioShock 2. Craig, jump in if you have anything to say about any of these. I know you love first-person shooters, so.
I'm just gonna sit blank, looking blank.
The
Just a
next
thumbs
one.
up as we read these out.
The Walking Dead, Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1 is on March 24th. Then on April 7th, we've got The Dig with a guest. Then April 21st, we've got Hollow Knight. And then finally on May... Or not finally, it's not the last episode, but last revealed episode. On May 5th, we've got Subterra, which is a board game.
No cutscenes in that one, Craig, if you want to listen to that one.
All of those games they sound wonderful, but they don't sound like games that I would play. But that's why you're doing it, isn't it? That's like you're playing them, so I don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe says that. Joe says that about games that go low on the list. We play them so you don't have to.
Thank you so much for coming on, Craig. It's been lovely. It's been really nice to kind of share in your passion of Sonic, and I'm sure there'll be many Sonic fans who listen to this that will be glad to hear Sonic get the representation that he's been needed for so long.
I hope so. Thank you. You don't get the chance too often to go and talk about about a Sonic game in general anyway, but certainly not to the games that were actually good. So it's been really nice, and it's been really nice to go back to that time in my life and think about what I was doing at the time and what it was like to experience those games. And I'm glad that I got to share that with you. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. And is there anything else you want to mention? Anything you want us to link to, your Twitter or anything else that you've been working on?
So I have two Twitter accounts. So I'm at Craig Herman on Twitter, but you can also find me on @Can'tStopPop, where I write about 90s and noughties songs. Basically doing what I do for Sonic, but doing it for pop music of the time.
Nice one, man.
Awesome.
Finn in the Discord will love that. He loves pop music, so he's going to be all over that.
Awesome.
Right, brilliant. So once again, thank you, Craig, for joining us. Is there anything else that you want to mention, Ollie, that I've forgotten to mention that's coming up in bonus points or anything interesting?
Yeah, so there's two things. Well, we don't know when they're going to happen because they're Patreon goals, but there's Blood Brothers. We're going to do a Bloodborne Let's Play with like a full production, which is going to be pretty cool. And the other thing, which we've only talked about, so this might be the first time you hear of it, depends when you listen to this episode, we're going to do a Mario Party with previous guests of the podcast. So that's called All-Star Party, and we're going to organise that at 110 Patreons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, yeah, there you go.
Cool.
And also thanks to all of them as well, the Patreon that they keep the show going. So
yeah, so you'd have seen them in the video, their names going past everyone on the Only tier. So if you want to find out more about that, it'll be linked down below. But apart from that is everything. So next episode's going to be Bioshock 2 in 2 weeks from when this one was released. So hopefully we'll see you there. But apart from that, thanks for watching or listening, and we'll see you all later. Bye.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.